Welcome back to another episode of the React Native Radio Podcast. Brought to you by the snooze button, giving you 9 more minutes to negotiate with reality. Episode 370, CopilotKit with Mike Ryan.
So Mazen, I assume you've been watching the World Cup.
Yes. I actually have it on in the background right now.
Do you?
So if I glance away from the camera, I'm paying attention.
What game is playing right now? So we can date this recording.
Argentina, Egypt in Atlanta, round of 16, and it is 12:49.
So now, as you're listening to this, you know how long it takes us to edit episodes.
Yes.
Have you been enjoying the Cup? Do you have any fun stories?
I have been enjoying it. Yeah, it's nice because, well, it's nice and not nice having kids that go to bed right when like the big games start. So you're like rushing to put them to sleep, and of course they don't listen, and then you miss half the game. But then usually the second half of most of these games have been, where most of the fun is. I think like everyone probably wanted Cape Verde to win and keep going, to keep that story going.
Yeah, they were the crowd favorite underdog.
For sure, yeah. I've been kind of telling my son, like, let's always root for the underdog for this World Cup. So it's been fun that way.
Yeah.
I came into the World Cup saying, all right, Portugal, it's your World Cup to lose. And they lost it last night, as you all know by now. So there goes that. But given, growing up in Africa, I am Morocco and Egypt right now.
Oh, yeah. Morocco is doing well. Egypt's doing well.
Especially because Nigeria.
Literally playing right now.
Yeah.
As we speak, they are up 1-0, just about to go to
a minute till halftime. Yeah. And I hope that result stands. Sorry, I'm not sorry, all you Messi fans out there, because I am not sorry.
Now our guest has a very unique perspective on the Egypt-Argentina game, which is happening right this moment. Mike Ryan is with us, and we'll introduce him properly in a second. But Mike, how is your experience of the Egypt-Argentina game?
Yeah, so the office that I work from is in the middle of Pioneer Square in Seattle, where we're about 2 blocks away from Lumen Stadium, where we've actually been hosting a number of the World Cup matches.
Nice.
And so there's a massive watch party that happens in the center of Pioneer Square. And in my good idea was to live close to the office, so I actually happen to live on the same block. So there's been no escape from the World Cup.
No escape.
None whatsoever. And while I'm rooting for Team Egypt, they do have a lovely chant they play on their horns whenever they make a significant play. And so I will be able to tell you with certainty when Egypt scores this morning. No doubt about it. The horns will be blaring. There's no escape.
Oh, vuvuzelas. That takes me back to the 2010 World Cup, which was in South Africa. Mazen, do you have a vuvuzela? You're a soccer fan, so I wouldn't put it past you.
Yeah, I have the 2010 vuvuzela, but it's put away so my son doesn't get his hands on it. But I got one. So I was up in New York. I didn't get to go to a game, but my brother-in-law was at one, working at one, and he picked up one of these.
Is it
it's
duck?
A duck vuvuzela with the Brazilian flag on it. It is very loud.
Oh my goodness.
Jed might hate me.
I wish the audience could see this.
I might tweet it out, but
well, yeah,
I'm gonna squeeze it.
We'll tweet a picture of it.
If you don't hear it, it's because the editors just decided to cut this part out. So sorry. So hopefully that came in. I barely squeezed it too. So
we can hear it. We cannot hear it on Zoom because Zoom filters it out. But I'm hoping it made it into your actual recording.
I did see it flicker. So yeah, it's there. So this is the, I guess, American vuvuzela, you could say. I don't know if it's actually being used in the stadiums or he just found it on Amazon. I don't know the story, but he obviously, for my wife's birthday, picked the most annoying gift to give her because he knew my son would get a hold of it. And then here we are.
Sure.
I got my hands on it. So yeah.
It's like the uncle responsibility.
Exactly. It's a requirement.
Was Pioneer Square pretty sad last night?
It was very sad. I must admit that I'm currently rooting against teams that might be blowing the horns. So it's probably bad American of me to say this, but I wasn't too heartbroken about their loss because the square was quiet and sleep was had. I got to sleep nice and hard.
Sleep.
Whereas I imagine if America had won, it would have been, total chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, for reference, last night was the U.S.'s overwhelming loss to Belgium, which Mike got to see firsthand at Pioneer Square. So,
Felt the building shake when the Jets flew over as part of the national anthem.
wow.
I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I did get to go see Iran, Egypt. Actually, here I got tickets for that, and I can confirm that the horns were in the stadium as well. So the horns are everywhere.
So still no break.
Oh yeah, it's been weeks now. I'm definitely at the point where I'm like, okay, let's wrap this thing up. It's time to go ahead and pick a winner out.
Living next to Lumen Field, they've had many games there, and I think they're officially done, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah, yesterday's game was the final one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the rest are like Miami, New York, LA.
They're still watching it, though, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
At Pioneer Square. Like, this is not going to stop for Mike.
It's honestly been one of the more fun cities, I think, because I've lived all over the United States, but Seattle has really embraced the World Cup. There's probably like 6 major areas where there's watch parties, and just hundreds, if not thousands of people are showing up at each of these locations and just having a great time.
I mean, prior to the arrival of Inter Miami, the MLS, you had the Portland Timbers and the Seattle Sounders, who both had, in my opinion, the best like fan base for the MLS.
Yeah, there's a lot of soccer culture in the Northwest.
Exactly.
It really is.
So it helps.
Versus football culture. We're very much soccer culture up here.
So helpful for that to happen. Well, okay. I think that's probably enough World Cup talk. We've lost half our audience, or probably more than half our
some people have probably tuned out. I promise we are going to talk about CopilotKit and React Native.
Well, okay. As we always do, I'm Mazen, staff software engineer here at Infinite Red. I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Robin, director of engineering here at Infinite Red.
Hello.
And joined by Mike Ryan. Mike, can you introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Ryan. I'm a principal architect here at CopilotKit, working on both our SDKs and AGUI, our protocol. Some of you may know me from the Angular community. I've written a lot of high or big open source projects in that space, including NGRX. And over the past few years, I've been working more and more in the React land, and I'm excited to be here talking about React Native.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, welcome onto the show. And before we get into our topic, let's hear from our sponsors.
Infinite Red. Infinite Red is a premier mobile app consultancy focused on Expo and React Native. We're a team of 30 that's located fully remote in the US with highly experienced mobile app developers. And we've been doing this for over a decade. We're also one of the first development teams to adopt agentic coding in a way that keeps high quality standards while also being able to dive in and do things the old school way if we need to. If you're looking for mobile app, Expo, or React Native expertise for your next project, hit us up at infinite.red/contact. Thanks. And now back to the episode.
Okay, let's get into our topic for today. As we mentioned, we're going to be talking about CopilotKit with Mike. Before we begin, I guess let's just set the scene. What is CopilotKit? What's your elevator pitch for CopilotKit?
Sure. Our elevator pitch is that all UI will be AI driven as more and more applications integrate AI systems into their user interfaces. And CopilotKit serves as a set of SDKs for developers to build agentic front ends, where you build applications that connect that agent to your user base, and those agents can respond with more than just text. They can respond with really visual responses, including generative UI, the ability for those agents to display user interfaces to your users as part of their responses.
No relation to GitHub Copilot?
No relationship to GitHub Copilot whatsoever.
I'm sure you get that question a lot, given the...
Yeah, whenever we're at conferences or something like that, it's like, you must be related to Microsoft in some way or another. And it's like, no. We're our own thing. Bit of a play, though, on GitHub Copilot and the Apple inclination to call things kits.
Things kit, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. So is like front-end stack for agents... Is it this new category of thing that didn't exist before and now needs to?
I would say so. I mean, it's not going to look too dissimilar from some of the UI patterns we saw beforehand. I think what trips up front-end developers about doing agentic user interfaces is that for a lot of front-end oriented folks, it's their first time encountering things like streaming or persistence of that streaming state, reconnection. And then also, setting up this pipeline that allows these agents to use the set of components that you're developing in its responses. And so there's a lot of unique challenges around both of those two concepts. that I think really
Yeah.
help define the need for this category to exist and why we'd want a lot of common code in open source libraries to be authored that we can build on top of as we're building these agentic applications.
So what would it look like without a kit like this if you were just to bolt a chatbot into an existing regular app? What sort of problems would you see that something like CopilotKit is going to come in and solve?
Yeah. So the first challenge you're going to have is how do you actually connect that agent protocol layer to your front end, right? I think you might intuitively reach for an HTTP call. I'm going to make an HTTP call with my user input. I'm going to send it to this REST endpoint. In the handler of that REST endpoint, it's going to call my agent, produce a response, and I'm just going to throw that back to the user. The problem that will arise for you, though, is that when agents are taking their turn, they go through a number of steps to arrive at their final output. They think, they reason, they call tools. They might respond multiple times as they're going through that, showing text back to the user. And so the first part that's going to unlock is oh, how do I actually stream this, right? How do I show every single step of this agent's turn in my application and give all of that information to my front end and then handle the state management complexities that come in with handling those streaming responses. So I'd say it's big problem number one that CopilotKit, and actually specifically, we have this open protocol called AGUI that protocol really tries to solve first and foremost.
What does UI, but what does AG stand for?
Yeah, it's the Agent User Interaction Protocol. So it is a completely open source, openly governed protocol for streaming agent responses to any user interface. And this protocol really exists because regardless of your agent framework or regardless of your front end, this streaming problem appears or manifests. So whether you're building with LangChain and React for the web, or Microsoft Agent Framework to Microsoft Teams, or Google ADK to your React Native application, you always have this streaming problem. And AGUI as a protocol serves to sort of standardize and formalize how to do that streaming between these different agent frameworks to these different front ends.
Got it. Okay. So let's kind of just talk about the building blocks. So you talked about how, what breaks with the current, chatbot that Robin mentioned. Walk us through CopilotKit and AGUI, how they all kind of come together. What are the core building blocks from your agentic connection to the front end? Any shared tools within there? How does that look end to end?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with just AGUI, and then I'll tell you how CopilotKit sits on top of that. So let's go back to that example where you're trying to build a chatbot and you decided, okay, I don't want to go roll my own. I don't want to build a REST API myself to go do this. I want to stream these responses back and forth. So AGUI as a protocol also comes with SDKs for various agent frameworks and various front ends. And you would then pick the relevant AGUI SDKs for your particular makeup. So I'm going to just keep using LangChain as an example. I think a lot of folks are familiar with LangChain as an agent framework, and it's quite popular right now. So let's say I've got my LangChain agent. I'm going to pick the AGUI adapter for LangChain. And what that will allow me to do is out of the box, stream all of those agent steps from my LangChain agent to my front end over SSE. So it's still an HTTP request, but it's going to be able to stream those steps via SSE to my front end. I'll then pick an AGUI client SDK, and that will let me consume that using RxJS observables. So I get this nice reactive interface that allows me to consume all those agentic turns or steps. And so sort of end to end now from agent to my front end, AGUI just by itself is going to handle a lot of that streaming for me. So then where CopilotKit comes in is it sits on top of this request structure. If AGUI is how to get agents to communicate with clients and back and forth, CopilotKit is let's make this a really rich experience. So CopilotKit gives you framework-specific bindings. So whereas AGUI gives you RxJS observables, CopilotKit's SDKs will give you React Native specific SDK with React hooks that work in React Native and let you consume those responses and consume that state in a way that'd be really familiar for a React developer. And then similarly, it lets you expose your React components over this protocol so that the agent can choose to render those components as part of its responses.
I see. Okay. It's sort of a layer between the developer and the internals of the protocol and stuff. Sounds like.
Exactly, yeah. And it's all developer focused. So you as a developer, you're using these SDKs to, power your application. There's no, it's funny, I'm AI related, but there's no AI actually in the loop in terms of CopilotKit or AGUI. We're just handling this communication step or piece between these two parts of your stack.
If people are familiar with like other protocol, like MCP is a protocol that like you hear about a lot in relation to AI and agents. Like if they're familiar with that, like how does that relate to AG? Is it like a sort of like an alternative? Are they doing different things? Like where do they fit together?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, when an agent takes its turn, it can think, it can call tools, and it can respond. MCP servers, out of the box, their primary capability is to allow an arbitrary system to expose tools to agents that they can call. So I use coding agents daily. And as an example, I do a lot of design work inside of Figma. Figma exposes an MCP server that lets my coding agent actually ask Figma for information about the designs that I've created as it's implementing its workflow. But what I would highlight there is that it wasn't like for MCP, it wasn't about how do I get the agent to the user. It's how do I give new tools to the agent that it can call while it's doing its workflow. So AGUI is very complementary to MCP. And in fact, if you were to go use AGUI today in CopilotKit, we have MCP support out of the box. And so you can go connect via CopilotKit to any MCP server and do that.
So not competing protocols, complementary protocols.
Very complementary.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's this like additive thing to MCP called MCP apps. And this one is probably the most analogous perhaps to CopilotKit, which is where an MCP server, its tools, instead of just providing context to the agent, can actually render like iframes and embedded applications inside of a chat context. And for MCP apps, like that extra layer on top of MCP, CopilotKit also supports that as well. So if you wanted to build like a React Native application that consumed an MCP server that supported MCP apps, CopilotKit would make it really easy to connect over that protocol and stream that to your React Native application.
That's super cool. Go ahead, Mazen.
Do I need to use both of them together, or can I use one over the other? Because I do know, looking at your docs, CopilotKit has some UI to it. So like the chat input, for example, was one of them. And I also saw there was like a bar chart rendering, so which I assume, is consumed by AI. Can I use CopilotKit as like my UI and then, not use AGUI, or even, vice versa? Are people adopting AGUI and not CopilotKit?
Yeah. So I'll answer that in reverse, which is first off, like we created AGUI at CopilotKit to go solve this problem. And it has completely outgrown CopilotKit in terms of the number of people that are using it and experiencing it. Because
many things end up working like that in software. Yeah.
Which we're happy to do, right? We saw that this needed to be solved, and it really deserved an open source treatment, and that a lot of different ecosystems would benefit from that solution. So I would say you can absolutely use AGUI without CopilotKit. There's plenty of folks that do take that approach, and the community around AGUI is really big. There's client implementations now for a variety of languages and a variety of agent frameworks that we don't even control or manage. It's all community contributed. Now, CopilotKit, you cannot use CopilotKit without AGUI. CopilotKit is really built on top of this protocol. And I'd say that CopilotKit has like two layers to it. It has a headless set of APIs for consuming or making it easy to consume AGUI and enrich that communication. For React Native developers, that's actually all we have today is a set of headless APIs. But then if you're building for React on the web, we also do have built-in chat components, chat input, thread drawer, a lot of those basic elements you would want to create just like your own chat GPT or Claude on the web. And you can, of course, use those if you want to, or you can keep it headless, but you can't use those components independently of CopilotKit. They are really meant for CopilotKit specifically.
Is the lack of pre-built chat UI on React Native specifically just haven't gotten to it yet, or is there some technical limitation that you're working around?
I would say mostly haven't gotten to it yet. We're an engineering team of 12 people. And so while we are all certainly very
I totally understand.
It's just the amount of surface that this company tackles, it's overwhelming at times.
We understand that well as a small team trying to do consulting and a podcast and like other things. So totally understand that. Is there We usually ask this question at the end, but is it set up in a way that there's like open source opportunities for anybody? Like if there's people in the React Native community that want to build like help, is that a possibility?
Yeah. So everything that we've talked about at this point is open source with an MIT license on it. So if you're like, man, I'd love to go contribute some built-in components for React Native and help like flesh out that SDK, I think it would really benefit from some community love. It's one of our newer SDKs. I think we just released our React Native support maybe a month ago. And it was driven by some of our own users that really wanted to bring the same AGUI agents that they're using on their web application into their React Native application. We said, of course, we'd love to go support that. Let's go do the work that it would take to make that work in that environment. So the more interest that we see in that SDK, the more we're going to want to go love on it ourselves too.
Have there been any like rough edges in the React Native side? I mean, like React Native has some things that can go deeply complex really quickly, like Hermes and polyfills and the new architecture and like all this stuff. Were there some challenges when it came to the React Native SDK, or that like people implementing it in React Native can expect to face when they try to use CopilotKit?
I mean, certainly. And for me, it was a good learning experience. Like I said, I'm classically an Angular developer, new-ish to React over the last 5 years, and this was my first real project getting into like the internals of React Native and making this work. And so thankfully, by not having built-in components, I think we got to avoid a lot of the common pitfalls that a React developer might have when building for React Native for the first time. But we did hit a few snags. I mean, I think one that comes to mind is that we meant a lot of UUIDs, and the RAND code that we would use underneath the hood, some of the math libraries we use underneath the hood for that didn't work out of the box in React Native and needed some custom support. I think there's also some complexity around handling the SSE streaming that I mentioned on React Native that needed some thought. Obviously, fetch is quite different in React Native versus on the web. But the good news is that if you are a React Native developer using CopilotKit, we've solved all of that. You don't have to go think about those things in particular. That's what's great about these libraries, right? Is that they solve those common challenges, and you can just enjoy consuming an AGUI stream without too much complexity on your part.
I assume you all are compatible with Expo also.
Yes, absolutely. So I know that Expo has like basically become the default way for a lot of new React Native projects.
It really has. Yeah. It really has.
I think people not using Expo are older applications that, have probably adopted Expo, but adopted it in, like one package here or there that just kind of, for a new feature that kind of works for them. And I would be surprised if it's not like tech debt to eventually evolve to full Expo stack. So,
yeah, for us, we're greenfield in this way, and so it just was like the natural. Yeah, this is how we're going to go about it for the way we're going to build. Yeah,
I want to kind of come back to. I think this is a question that I always have, and I think a lot of people now with AI taking over a lot of things. It's when we're talking about generative UI, right? Who should render the UI? Who should control the UI?
What does generative UI actually mean?
Yes, how to just explain these in terms of a chat.
Yeah. So generative UI as a concept is the idea that the agent can render UI as part of its agent turn to the user. And I must admit, I think I was quite skeptical for a while that chat would just be like the way that we would be talking to AI. But the further we've gotten into this, the more I'm like, actually, you know what? If I think about what computers are meant to do and what a user interface is meant to do, it's meant to bridge the gap between the systems we're building on top of and the way that humans communicate, which is we talk, we type, we text. And so chat has become this dominant way for interacting with agents because they can talk back, right? They have the ability to understand natural language, and they can synthesize new language back at you. And so what we want to do with generative UI is we basically want to say, okay, well, it can't just all be text characters. At some point, I'm going to want to see information. I'm going to want to make choices. Let me, as a developer, enable this agent to show UI back as part of its response.
So it's basically like an app where you, the developer, previously controlled everything that was ever rendered. Now you're letting an agent basically write code that's immediately like displayed in your app and shown to users.
That's right. And we really break down generative UI as being a spectrum from being fully controlled to fully open-ended. So an example of controlled generative UI, in CopilotKit, we have this hook called use component. And it allows you to expose a React component that you fully authored. You control the styling for, you control the logic, the implementation. You give the LLM some schema on how to bind to the props. And you don't have to do that if you don't want to let it bind to the props. And that component becomes exposed to the LLM. And then the agent can choose to show that component on demand. And we call this fully controlled generative UI because while the choice to show the component lives with the agent, in terms of what that component looks like, how it behaves, you as the developer have complete control over that experience.
They're picking from a selection that you have curated.
Exactly.
And you're like, I build the components. You choose which ones you would want to render and what information to give them. But like, I control the components. Okay.
I love that idea of giving it the guardrails, right? Almost like bowling with the sides up kind of thing. Like, hey, this is our UI. This is how we can do here, access to props and all that. Now we've defined our UI. How do we sync our state? Like, how does the communication happen back and forth now to that UI to adapt and change based on the agent's communication?
Yeah. So AGUI as a protocol has this concept of shared state. So if you build with an agent framework, as you define an agent, it has this concept of agent state, and it can kind of read from that state and make changes to that state object kind of internally. And what AGUI lets you do is it actually lets you stream that state object to your front end and then consume it almost the same way you would with like any React state. Like we get essentially like a use state hook that lets you read from that state, but also write to it. And so if you, let's say that you wanted to let your LLM or your agent render like a menu, you're doing like a online ordering for a restaurant. And so your React component is like food menu, and your menu has a couple of different food options on it. As the user interacts with it, you can actually use these hooks to write to that agent state. And then the agent can read what those selections were and complete its turn based on that information. So controlled generative UI, the far left side of this spectrum, like it gives you this ability to let the agent show your components, and then you can have those components directly read to and write from that agent state as part of its flow.
So then there's the other side of the spectrum.
So the other side of the spectrum then would be fully open-ended generative UI. And I would say this one, I don't see a lot in production yet, though actually I do see it in like the ChatGPT app or the Claude app.
It's the YOLO mode.
It is. It's the YOLO mode. It's here's an iframe. You, the agent, you can generate whatever HTML, CSS, and JavaScript you want to within this iframe.
Yikes.
It's fully sandboxed. Have fun. Whatever the users ask for, you go for it. It's one of those things that demos really well, I think.
Yeah.
Especially for like reporting. I actually see a lot of my teammates, not just on engineering, but outside of engineering here at CopilotKit, lean on like Claude Code artifacts, which is this ability for Claude Code to generate some HTML and like publish it on the web in one of these iframes. And this style of fully open-ended generative UI gives your users a lot of freedom and flexibility to generate whatever they want to, but it's still not super clear to me like what the actual maybe business applications of this will be or how much people will embrace it. So then, kind of,
it's a part. It feels like a party trick.
it's a bit of a party trick,
like not maybe worth a liability for like enterprise situations.
Yeah, if you're an enterprise and you care a lot about like accessibility and performance, this is not going to be the style of generative UI for you. But in the middle of this is what we call declarative generative UI. This is my personal favorite approach. So it's kind of like that use component piece where I expose a React component, except in this situation, I'm actually going to expose a catalog of React components to the LLM. And what the LLM can do is it can assemble a React tree of those components on the fly. So instead of just picking one and binding props to one, it can make lists of components. It can make a full tree out of those components. Now, I still control the catalog. I still have like guardrails in place of what all it can pick. But it has a lot more freedom in its ability to assemble a response. And this is really powerful for like let's go back to the restaurant menu ordering example. If I wanted to ask about a couple of different menu options, like I wanted to ask this bot, hey, I'm vegetarian, which menu options do you have that are vegetarian friendly? It could assemble a response of all the vegetarian friendly menu items and like show them to me in a really nice UI and kind of guide me through them. And this is built, we actually have collaborated on this with our friends at Google on a protocol that is similarly named. All these protocols have the most, it's called A2 UI. And it is the agent to user interface. Yeah.
I was just like looking at your docs, and yeah, like the fact that you have to have a whole page that's like, okay, their names are similar, but they're not the same.
They're not the same. Yeah. AGUI carries A2UI.
We can use both. They work well together. It's not one or the other. Yeah.
And again, different use cases, right? One's handling the streaming and the connectivity. This one is just about, I want to let my agent assemble a UI from a catalog of components. And I see that one having a lot more adoption as developers continue to build out these agentic chat applications.
Yeah. A happy medium is almost always where people land.
For sure.
You've talked a bit about like use cases like restaurant ordering and stuff. What are other sort of like specifically mobile use cases where like this like CopilotKit is really going to shine, and the idea of generative UI and your protocol?
Yeah. I think the mobile use cases are likely to be most dominant. I think it's where we actually want to reach for an assistant that we can quickly talk to or ask a quick question of is when we're on the go. And so some of the use cases that come to mind just from the folks or the developers I get to engage with, there's a medical company that allows you to like quickly get questions and answers about some medical reports about you. And so it's handy just to like query, hey, what was in this report? What did it look like? And then they're using generative UI to show well-cited charts and visualizations. And that's really important here because if you let the LLM freeform a text response, it could make up a bunch of nonsense, right? And that's not
what you don't
want in a medical setting.
In a medical setting.
But if you're leaning on generative UI and it's picking authoritative components that you have control over, then when it shows a chart of medical information to a user of the mobile application, you know that data is like well cited, well sourced, and you're kind of like protecting almost your user from some of those LLM hallucinations. And so that's been one of my favorite use cases where there's like on the go, users want to ask about this result that they've received, because you were never at your computer when you receive a result. Let's give them the ability to ask questions, but still give them good authoritative answers as part of that flow.
I love that. I think we're in the age of we're in the age of AI now, or some people might say we're getting there. We're getting there, let's just say. But we're also in the stage where your app has a lot of information, right? We've built apps with a lot of information, a lot of text, images, and stuff like that. And this to me sounds like the perfect use case of like showing you targeted information, right? Getting your users to be a little more better informed by your app. So going back to like the mobile ordering app that you mentioned, if you've told the LLM or the agent that you are vegan, right? Next time we come into the app, I as a vegan would anticipate not to see your triple stack beef cheeseburger on there again, right? So like now you're winning trust from that user back, right? It's like, okay, this app knows me, understands me, right? So my lists are always filtered down to like my specialty or like my specifics, right? And maybe there's like a button here like, our menu has changed. Do you want to see our full menu? And you get to reset that context for you. We have a question here and I kind of want to ask it still, but I feel like the answer should be like, no. But any like situations that people should steer away from using something like this? Because I know medical has the whole like asterisk of like, okay, we don't want to be
HIPAA
recommending something wrong. We could get sued and this and that, right? But at the same time, like
it sounds like it's actually a pretty good
I would use it.
fit for something like that.
I would use it. Like I'd love to go into
guardrails.
my chart now and be like, because it's a pain to pull up my chart and like look at like my test results over the past years. When I could just say, hey, I want to look at my, cholesterol for the last, all my cholesterol results. Can you plot it on a chart for me? And I get one pretty chart with all that and a distillation of all the doctor's notes there. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Instead of having to click through every single thing and remember like, oh, 2 years ago, I was at this. Now I'm fluctuating, stuff like that. So yeah, my question is like, is there a use case where you say people should steer away from it?
Absolutely. I mean, every company that I get to work with at CopilotKit will tell me the same thing, which is that in terms of accuracy, actually getting your agent to be accurate for your users, you can maybe hit 90% success rate with the state of the technology today. And I think it's still wildly useful. I think we wouldn't all be using these apps all the time like ChatGPT and Claude if that wasn't useful to us. But that 10% of not so accurate or not quite right means that you want to be very careful about putting agents or using this technology in places where you just make a decision. So it's one thing for the agent to pull up parts of your chart in my chart. It's a whole nother thing if the agent was going to start like prescribing medicine for you based on those results, right? It's the difference being here where it's starting to choose to take real world action on your behalf, where I think my alarm bells start to go off in this.
Like, no, too far.
But on the other hand, like it is possible and you can make this good over time. And one of the ways that we facilitate this is with human in the loop. So when agents take their turn, like I said, I can call tools. Some tools that actually take real world action, you might want to get your human to approve that tool call before it actually takes place. And so CopilotKit and AGUI also enable this human in the loop workflow where you can put that guardrail around certain tool calls and actually show like a really nice form or confirmation dialogue inside of your application saying, hey, the agent wants to go do this. Are you sure you want to let the agent do it before the agent goes off and does it?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to be mindful of that too, that people are going to go, start exploring with putting agents in situations where they get to make these decisions. And we want to make it easy for developers to keep humans in the loop when agents go about that flow.
Awesome. Well, I think we're kind of getting towards the end of our episode, but what's next for CopilotKit? Any upcoming releases for us to keep our eyes on? Like what's coming soon?
Yeah, so I liked the way that you extended that analogy about the restaurant menu ordering bot and how like the bot can remember what it is that my dietary preferences were. And we basically see this emerging all over the place for all sorts of companies. This ability to personalize themselves based on their past interactions with you. And so at CopilotKit, for us, we used to think of ourselves as just being SDKs for the web. And now we're seeing more and more companies want to bring those agents and that personalization to wherever their user is. So obviously React Native was like a natural place to go next. But in upcoming releases, we're going to let you bring those same AGUI agents to Slack or Teams or Discord or WhatsApp or Telegram. And I think that's really handy because whether I'm in the car and I've got an app using Android Auto, or I'm on my phone, or I'm back at my computer, or I'm texting from my device, that same agent can be there and remember who I am and sort of pick up and show me generative UI wherever I am. I'm really excited about those sets of releases that are going to help developers bring those out. And then also we're going to make it a lot easier for developers to build agents that can learn from your interactions. So we're going to really empower developers with a great learning SDK to help make memory and learning a core part of the user experience.
That's pretty cool. That's awesome.
I'm super excited for that.
Where can our listeners, follow CopilotKit's progress, listen for updates? Where are you all posting all this information?
Yeah, we're most active on X and LinkedIn. So you can check us out at CopilotKit on both of those platforms. And then I am personally active and write and tweet a lot about it. You can follow me on Blue Sky, X, and LinkedIn at Mike Ryan Dev. I'm also highly available on GitHub if you ever have any questions. I'm always happy to help folks out as they're building generative user interfaces.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Mike, we really appreciate you coming on to the episode and sharing all this knowledge about CopilotKit. It's exciting. We live in an exciting time, and you all are building something very cool. And I think I can see myself using some of these products to put together a delightful experience for users.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And as mentioned, if you want to get involved in open source, this is all open source. We'd love to have some outside contribution to it.
Love that.
Well, as we always do, Robin, do you have a mom joke to send us off?
I do. I have a good one. It's really topical for the World Cup. Why was Cinderella so bad at soccer? Because she kept running away from the ball.
Nice. Yes. Timely one. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
All right. Bye.
As always, thanks to our editors, Tyler Williams and Jed Bartosky, our marketing and episode release coordinator, Justin Husky, and our guest coordinator, Mazen Chami. Our producers and hosts are Jamin Holmgren, Robin Hines, and Mazen Chami. Thanks to our sponsor, Infinite Red. Check us out at infinite.red/radio. A special thanks to all of you listening today. Make sure to subscribe to React Native Radio on all the major podcasting platforms.